Today I have started the current affairs from June 2020 because most probably questions will come from June 2020 only. Last year, due to COVID-19, prelims was conducted in October. That is why, but in October prelims also current affairs came up to April, May only because they might have prepared the question paper earlier, expecting they would be able to conduct the prelims examination by May, June itself. But anyway, better for our safety, we have to start from June 2020 current affairs. I'm picking up the important current affairs from June 2020. Certain current affairs we have to study in detail. Certain other current affairs we have to understand what is that. Because question will come giving a particular term, as I discussed with you the Mitra scheme earlier. The Mitra scheme which was in news recently is related to. Then four options will be there. We need to have a basic idea. It is what is that. But certain other current affairs, we should know in detail all the provisions of current affairs. That is why current affairs is a very wider session. We have to go a little bit faster in current affairs session. And whatever current affairs is required in detail, I will take you in detail. Remaining current affairs, I will give you a glimpse on the current affairs. What is that? Otherwise, if we are going to learn all the current affairs in detail, everything will be non-productive. You will not be able to remember anything. Some current affairs magazines and booklets you might have seen, they will give a very detailed essay on single current affairs, 2-3 pages, how far a person can remember. Yes. And that is why we have to address the question. Wherever we are expecting a detailed question, we have to go in detail. Wherever we are expecting a simple question, and we have to go in a simple way. And some terms they want to know whether you are familiar with that news. Some other things they want to know whether you have learned in detail, because looking into nature of a current affairs, for example, the first current affairs we are discussing is national education policy. Obviously, UPSC will never test that whether you know what is national education policy. Everybody knows it is for improving education in India. At the same time, I can tell you another example of current affairs. Hagia Sophia. You might have heard of this term in the news. Hagia Sophia, or somebody pronounces this way, Hagia Sophia. Yes. And Hagia Sophia, the exact Turkish pronunciation is Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia, while asking a question, UPSC will have a tendency to check it is not a current affairs of India, it is a current affairs of Turkey or a global current affairs. Let us see whether the aspirants know what is that. That feeling will be there in the mind of a person who prepares the question paper. There, we don't need to study the entire history of Hagia Sophia, and we have to study what is that. And what is the simple history? 2-3 points we need to study anyway. Today we'll discuss the Hagia Sophia also. We'll discuss the national education policy also. But obviously, looking into national education policy, you can also expect that question will come giving 2-3 sentences, identify the correct statement. Yes, then naturally a person will be able to question in such a way, which of the following statements are true regarding national education policy 2020? Other than this, how a person will ask the question regarding this topic. But in the topic Hagia Sophia, the Hagia Sophia, which of the following is the correct statement regarding Hagia Sophia, which was in news recently? 4 statements will be given. If you know what is Hagia Sophia, you can get the correct answer. That type of question can be framed out of that current affairs. Then looking into nature of current affairs, I have framed the class. Whatever we need to have a summary look, and we will look in a summarized way. Whatever we need to see in detail, we'll see in detail also. Then first is national education policy. Somehow I will go a little bit faster because we have finished the conventional class. Then current affairs will be easy only. National education policy aims to making India a global knowledge superpower. We want to, because the future is for the knowledge, then we want to make Indians having the modern education and modern knowledge. The 2 earlier education policies were brought in 1968 and 1986. This is the 3rd national education policy after independence of India. First was in 1968, second one was in 1986. Easy to remember, 1968, 1986. Just 2 digits you have to change. Then 68 and 86, 2 other national education policies were there. What are the changes coming in national education policy in the school education? Presently, we have a 10+2 school education. 10 years secondary, 2 years senior secondary. Abolishing that, we are going into a 5 years primary, 3 years upper primary, and again 3 years high school and 4 years higher secondary. That is total 15 years of education. Presently, we have 12 years school education. That is going to be 15 years school education starting at the age of 3. 3 to and 3 to 5 will be, and 3 to 8, sorry, and 3 years first stage is 5 years, 3 to 8, that 5 years will be preschool, and 8 to 11, 8 to 11 another 3 years will be primary, another 3 years, 11 to 14, another 3 years will be secondary, and another 4 years will be senior secondary or the high school and higher secondary, 4 years, and 14 to 18. Then between the age of 3 up to the age of 18 years will be the free and compulsory education in India will be the, and between the age of 3 and 18 will be the school education, 15 years school education instead of 12 years school education. That also divided into 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. That is the system we are going to introduce now. Next one, an independent authority to regulate both public and government schools. Presently, different schools have different syllabus. Yes, different schools have different terms and conditions. Some are government school following one syllabus, others are private schools following this syllabus or the other syllabus, and there is no single authority to regulate all the schools. In India, every banks are functioning under a same regulatory body, RBI. Similarly, we want to make it one independent regulatory body for both public and private schools. One body will be there at the center regulating all public and private schools in India. Next one, emphasize on foundational literacy and numeracy, no rigid separation between academic streams, extracurricular, vocational streams in the school. See, presently our schools are the hub of learning only. Yes, we are learning. Learning means learning whatever written in the textbook. Lot of knowledge is there, but practically we are a big failure. After having graduation, obviously two people I can tell you. One person, he studied up to graduation. He was a studious student, learning everything, getting 90, 95%, 100% marks in all the subjects. Another person, he became a dropout after 10th standard. And that person joined with a local electrician and he was going for the electrical works with that electrician. Now, the second person has the skill to do the electrical work of a complete building. He can do the electrical work. He learned from the experience. The first person has only the knowledge, what Karl Marx told and what other people have told. Regarding that knowledge is the, which person will be able to more successful to survive in the life? How many of you feel that electrician sometimes will be more able to survive in the life than the person having textbook knowledge? That is one of the major problems of our education system. The top rank holders in the class, they end up becoming a primary school teacher. And the dropouts in the school, sometimes they end up earning some 2,000 rupees in a day and taking big contracts of the electrical work and other marble work and tiles work, and they are earning huge amount of money because the second person got a skill, first person got only knowledge. Instead of that, education, as per the new education policy, education will emphasize on foundational literacy. Basic literacy will be given and numeracy, mathematics will be given. But at the same time, no rigid separation between academic streams, extracurricular, vocational streams in the school. We will promote among the students to learn carpentry in the school only, electrical works in the school only, construction works in the school only. Then we will promote the academic streams also, and along with that extracurricular, beyond academics, some extracurricular vocational streams also in the school, how to do a profession, that will also be taught in the schools. Vocational education should start from class 6 with internship. From class 6 only will start teaching the children some skill, some vocation, some skill they will have in the life. Then a person, even he becomes highly educated, let him learn some electrical work. Now what happens? A PhD holder is waiting for the local electrician to do some repairing of some, if one bulb is not functioning at home, you have to wait for an electrician. Am I right? We individually have no skills. That is why we learn only knowledge from the school. We never learn something practical from the school. And if there is any other small error in a water tap, and we have to wait for the plumber, that is a new generation people are. Then instead of that, from class 6, we will give the vocational education for all the students. Next one, teaching up to at least grade 5 to be in mother tongue or regional language. Very good. At least up to the class 5, we have to teach, and in the mother tongue only. There are certain modern English medium schools, and they charge 100 rupees fine if the children are speaking something other than English inside the school campus. Yes, this utmost stupidity, destroying the personality of the children. I request you, if you have children in future, never send into such schools. Why? Whether speaking in English is more important or speaking is more important. Whether speaking in English is more important or speaking is more important. Speaking is more important because of the fear of the fine. Because if the fine comes and the parents will scold, because of the fear of this fine, many people are afraid of speaking inside the campus. Campus is a place where we have to, or school is a place where you have to learn to speak, and whatever language it is. Now it is destroying the personality of a student, and we are installing a fear in the mind of the student when he speaks. And if a mother tongue term comes up, mother tongue sentence comes up, fine only. Then let them enjoy the school life. Let them completely utilize the school life. It is a place for the personality development, not a place for the English development. Then that is why it is a highly welcome step that government has taken a step that up to grade 5 and 100% education, whatever school it is, and it should be in mother tongue. No language will be imposed on any student. That is another important thing. When the children are speaking English and we feel that parents are very proud, let them, whatever language, let them be a good person, and let them be a good person, and there will be success for them. English language, students should learn. Whatever language they are learning, I support it. Let us be able to create an interest among the children on learning language instead of forcefully imposing the language. If you speak another language, fine only. That is, what nonsense is that? Personally, I studied in a Malayalam medium school. Up to my graduation, completely it was Malayalam medium only. And during graduation, also teachers were taking class in Malayalam only. And still, and I picked up in my life, and I was able to speak English because the teachers, I believe that teachers of English in my school days, they were able to create an interest on learning this language, not forcing this particular language. Now, modern times, there are certain English medium schools, compulsory 100% English medium only. What happens to children coming out of those English medium schools? They are unable to speak. They are not able. They are neither good in English nor in mother tongue. Yes, they don't know English also. They don't know mother tongue also. That is the final output of such schools that should never be promoted. If you want to have a better citizen of India, we should promote the mother tongue in their education. Then by 2030, minimum degree qualification for teaching will be 4-year integrated B.Ed degree. By 2030, we'll make it compulsory that for a person to be a teacher should go for example, a person joins BSc Mathematics with the aim of becoming a teacher. Then he should join B.Ed Mathematics from the beginning after 12th standard only, and 4 years course, that is B.Ed Mathematics. Mathematics will also be taught there. How to teach mathematics will also be there. Then these two things will be combined together, and a teacher's minimum qualification will be reshifted into 4-year B.Ed, and with the B.Ed and will be the minimum qualification of a teacher by 2030. These are the important improvements and suggestions for the school education. You please note it down. This thing will be most probably in the examination. Teaching up to at least up to the grade 5 to be in mother tongue or regional language. You will get confused there. And no language will be imposed. An interesting point only in the national education policy. That's why interesting points most probably will come in the examination as a statement. Now, I have already shared with you this PPT just now during the break time. And using the PPT, you can see into this image. This image is directly taken from the official website, I think. And this image will give you a summary of whatever we discussed. The improvements in the school education is here in the existing academic structure and new academic structure. And the explanation of the each stage, what will be the, it is given here. You can go by the picture and you can understand it. Now coming to higher education. Certain new improvements have been suggested in the higher education. First one is that gross enrollment ratio in the higher education after 12th standards. The gross enrollment ratio should be raised into 50% by 2030, 2035. And at present, if you are looking at present, after 12th standard, if you are taking the total number of students who qualified the 12th standard, among them, only 26.3% are going for higher education, graduation. 26.3% are going for the graduation. Especially the women. After 12, they are getting married and they are settled down, they don't go for higher education. That is why the new education policy has targeted that. From 26.3%, we will increase the gross enrollment ratio in the higher education into 50% of the people who are qualifying the school level. Out of them, 50% should go into higher education by 2035. For that, obviously, government has to increase the number of seats. That is why, for that purpose, 3.5 crore seats to be added in higher education. Government will add 3.5 crore more seats into the higher education. Next one, a holistic undergraduate education with a flexible curriculum can be of 3 or 4 years. We will make a 3 or 4 years holistic undergraduate education. The specialty will be that, imagine, now there is a problem. If you join engineering, you join after 12th standard, you join for an engineering degree. After 1 year or 2 years of engineering, you realize that you are not fit for that. Yes, you realize that you are not fit for that. You are becoming back in all papers, etc., etc. Lot of troubles are there. You don't have any option. You have to continue either that education or you have to drop and go for other course. If you drop and go for other course, you will not get any certificate for learning 2 years the engineering. It is a loss for you. That system we are going to abolish. We will make a 3 to 4 years graduation. After 1 year, if a person feels that I want to discontinue this course and go for another course, he will have an exit after 1 year. That means he will be given certificate of qualifying first year of graduation in the engineering. And then he can add into his qualification. I have said 1 year engineering. After that, he went to another course and completed that. Then he will have that course also. That means whatever point you want to exit from a course, then that point, up to that point, certificate will be given to you. That is also a good thing only. Instead of making many people without any degree. And degree first year completed, that is a qualification. Degree second year completed, that is also a qualification. Then instead of waiting for the complete degree to be completed, whatever completed, that certification will be given for you. Holistic undergraduate education with a flexible curriculum can be of 3 or 4 years with multiple exit options. There will be multiple points you can exit and appropriate certification within this period. There will be appropriate certification for you, and within this period, forever, whatever you complete, there will be appropriate certification for you. Next one, all of you sometimes might have heard of MPhil before PhD, and there was a pre-PhD research program earlier now existing in the universities called as MPhil. Then MPhil course will be discontinued. Then MPhil courses will be discontinued, and all the courses at undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD level now will be interdisciplinary. Instead of promoting only one masters in biology or masters in mathematics, we want from master's level, we want to promote interdisciplinary biomathematics. Then a person has to learn something from biology, something from mathematics, and in the research understand how you can combine both of them together, how you can combine together biological and mathematics knowledge for having a better research. Then that is the new trend of the interdisciplinary research. Then from postgraduate level, we are going into, from undergraduate to postgraduate level, we are going into interdisciplinary level, we are focusing more. Next one, academic bank of credits to be established to facilitate transfer of credits. See, academic bank of credits. Each person learning in graduation or masters or the PhD will have an academic bank of credit. Whatever you achieved during your career, it will be some points will be added into your academic bank. That means when you go for an interview, by opening your account in the academic bank, the recruiter can understand what different things you have learned in your life and what different abilities you have shown in your life. If you have got a first prize in some research article publication, and then it will be added as an academic credit in the academic bank only. Then it will be established to facilitate transfer of credits. That means you can transfer your credits into, you can have a transfer of your credits, and you can transfer all your credit into your bank. Then when an interviewer is interviewing you, by opening your account online, the interviewer can understand what achievements you have in the life. Multidisciplinary education and research universities. Government wants to establish certain universities promoting multidisciplinary education. That is, in that one person is learning multiple disciplines. As I told you, mathematics and biology, and he will do the PhD in biomathematics. Then that way, multidisciplinary education and research universities for that purpose at the level of IITs and IIMs at present. Presently, we have IITs and IIMs as the highest institutes of research for engineering and management. In that level, we want to establish the MERUs, that is multidisciplinary education and research universities, and to be set up as models of best multidisciplinary education of global standards in the country. We want to establish the international standard of multidisciplinary education in India. Next one, in the higher education, the National Research Foundation. A new organization called as National Research Foundation will be created as an apex body for fostering a strong research culture and building a research capacity across higher education. See, mostly now we Indians, we are into the learning of knowledge. We never produce the knowledge. Yes, we are very good in learning whatever is given in the textbook and whatever somebody else has written in the textbook. But we are not into the production of knowledge. Earlier, India was not like that. C.V. Raman produced new knowledge in the mathematics. Aryabhatta produced the new knowledge in the astronomy. Yes. Then whether if you are taking the examples of production of knowledge, whether ancient India was better or modern India was better, somewhere ancient India was better in production of the knowledge. Now we have the ability to learn. We don't have the ability to create knowledge. Then for that purpose, obviously research is creating knowledge only. And presently what our research scholars are doing, they are copying from here and there. And that is why government was forced to bring a plagiarism software also to check whether how much percentage of your thesis is copied and from other sources. Then one institute we want to establish, National Research Foundation, will be created as an apex body, a top body for fostering strong research culture and building research capacity across higher education. Then in higher education sector, we want to create the research capacity. Next one, Higher Education Commission of India. Higher Education Commission of India will be set up as a single umbrella body for entire higher education, excluding medical and legal education. Next, presently we have UGC, University Grants Commission. They are more into controlling universities and making rules and regulations for universities. More than that, for the academic development of the higher education, the colleges and universities in India, government will establish Higher Education Commission of India. Then they will look into how to improve, more than regulating the universities and more than setting rules and regulations for universities. They will see into how to improve the quality of higher education, how to create the academic excellence in higher education. For that purpose, Higher Education Commission of India will be set up as a single umbrella body for entire higher education, excluding medical and legal education. There will be separate organization for the medical and legal education. Medical Commission, National Medical Commission of India, and for National Legal Commission of India will be there. Then other than that, and other than medical and legal, National Higher Education Commission of India will function. Public and private higher education institutions will be governed by the same set of norms and regulation, accreditation and academic standards. A private university or a private college, whatever is there, then we will make same set of rules and regulations for those universities. Next one, in India we have a system. One university, hundreds of colleges affiliated to that university. Yes or not? And one university, hundreds of colleges affiliated to that university. What happens? Inside the university campus, education is good. But inside the colleges affiliated to the university, there is no quality of education. This is something found only India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And if you are going to Oxford University, no affiliated colleges. Cambridge University, no affiliated colleges for them. Then this is something unique in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. Then we want to abolish that. Within 15 years, all the affiliated colleges will be phased out. Either they will be upgraded into a university itself, or they will be upgraded at least into an autonomous college status. It will be upgraded. We will remove the system of universities getting colleges affiliated to them. Yes, then hope you understood what are the changes we are bringing in the higher education sector through the national education policy. Some other points on national education policy. An autonomous body, National Educational Technology Policy. In our education system, especially when COVID-19 came up, we have seen that how much poor our teaching and education system in using the online things. Yes, using the online teaching and online teaching, how much we are not still. I believe that even Academy of Civil Services has to update a lot. And I do the research every time and how we can use the more effective technologies. Then, for example, sitting in the class, you should get a real feeling of the classroom. That how we can create it. There's some technology will be there. And in my research, I found sometimes some specs is there. I don't, what is there, some 3D specs, and if you put that specs, you can experience like sitting in a classroom only if we are arranging here as a classroom. Point is that our online system or technology used in the education is very poor in India, and that is why we have created a new team. And because in the classrooms also still many schools teachers are using the old blackboard and the chalk only. Yes, in many schools still the old blackboard and chalk is there. Even the green board is not reached many schools, and removing the green board, and there are new technologies known as the LED flat panel, etc. In the Academy of Civil Services classroom, we are using an LED flat panel. That is the best technology in the world for teaching in a classroom. Then that is this way we have to improve ourselves. We have to improve ourselves in the technological assimilation to our education. For that purpose, government is going to create a National Educational Technology Forum, will be created to provide a platform for the free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance learning, assessment, planning, and administration. For this purpose, we will establish a team for looking into how to improve the technology of teaching in India. Next one, all over India, we want to create a national assessment center, Prakash, and for the assess the students to make an assessment how much improvement is there for a student in the learning. Whatever achievement a student makes in during the learning process, we will add everything into a portal that is called as Prakash. Prakash means light. Then Prakash is the name of the National Assessment Center, and that will assess the development of each and every student in India. That is also created as a part of National Education Policy. National Education Policy, it also paves the way for foreign universities to set up campuses in India. We are asking Oxford University, Cambridge University, Exeter University personally in Doha city of Qatar. And there is a wonderful example of an education city. We have in India, we have the special economic zones are there where all foreign companies will set up their business. And Google will have an office, Microsoft will have an office, Facebook will have an office. You might have seen the tech city of Hyderabad and high-tech city of Hyderabad. and Info Park of Cochin in Kerala, Techno Park of Trivandrum in Kerala. That way, in different parts of India, we have these special economic zones where companies are setting up their company. We don't have any special education zone. Yes, we don't have any special education zone in India where all the international universities have their campuses. A student can go there and choose whatever campus he wants to learn. It will be a good idea having an education zone where all the modern education different. You can see a campus of Oxford University, Exeter University, Bern and Leiden University. All these universities have their campuses here in India. Then we have this education policy wants to promote the foreign universities to establish their campuses in India. It emphasizes setting up gender inclusion fund, a fund for including the female in the research process. We want to bring the housewives into research and the female into research and ladies into research. For that, we want to establish a gender inclusion fund, special economic zone for disadvantaged regions and groups. We should establish some education park and special education zone and for the areas which are disadvantaged areas in India. Next one, for promoting our old culture, we want to establish certain institutes. For example, National Institute for Pali language. Pali was the language of the Mahayana Buddhism, and Persian and Prakrit language. We want to promote the Persian language, was the official language of India during the Mughal Empire in India, and Indian Institute and Prakrit language, it was the language of the common people in ancient India. Buddha and Jaina were speaking in that language. Then we want to establish 3 national institutes, one for Pali, one for Persian, one for Prakrit. Next one, Indian Institution for Translation and Interpretation to be set up. We want to have an institution for translation because a lot of knowledge is there in ancient Sanskrit text, in ancient textbooks of India, in different old languages of India or ancient languages of India. For promoting that language, for promoting that knowledge, we want to establish the Indian Institute for Translation and Interpretation will be established. Next one, in the national education policy, it has suggested that presently, out of the total expenditure of government of India, 4.6% of our GDP means gross domestic product, we are spending for education. From there, the national education policy is asking government to increase into 6% of the GDP. As soon as possible, at the earliest possible time, government please increase the expenditure on education sectors in India from 4.6% into 6% of the GDP. These are the important points regarding the national education policy. Next one, we are discussing an organization in India. The organization's name is Spike McKay. Question might come sometimes. The Spike McKay, which was in news recently, which of the following statements is the best explains the Spike McKay, which was in news recently? Basically, it is an organization. By looking name, it looks like some European organization or some foreign thing, yes, and does not look as an Indian, but exactly it's an Indian organization. The organization is also interesting. The organization is for promotion of Indian classical music culture among the youths. And the full name of the organization, you can see that Spike McKay, Society for Promotion of Indian Classical Music and Culture amongst the youth. That is the full form. And Society for Promotion Indian Classical Music and Culture among the youth. That is the full form. They will not give you the full form. Spike McKay, because why it was in news recently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Spike McKay's international convention via a video conference. Due to COVID-19, he addressed that via a video conference. Then it's an interesting organization. They are promoting the Indian music and culture. Then that is the main aim. It's a non-political nationwide voluntary movement founded in 1977. And the movement promotes Indian cultural heritage like classical music, classical dance, folk music, yoga, meditation, crafts, and other aspects of Indian culture. Basically, why it is so popular? Because the government officially supports it. Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, and Ministry of Human Resource Development, that is Ministry of Education, supports this organization nationally. That is why the organization is close to government and supported by government also. AIM iCrest. AIM means Adult Innovation Mission. What is innovation? Adal, you know Adal Bihari Vajpayee, the ex-Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of India. In the name of Adal Bihari Vajpayee, government has introduced a scheme called as Adal Innovation Mission. That mission's aim is that promote anything you are doing in an innovative way. Somebody is coming up with a new mobile application for online teaching, then it is an innovation only. Somebody coming up with something innovative, and especially in the technology field, we want to promote it. For that purpose, we have started the Adult Innovation Mission. Recently, under Adult Innovation Mission, we have started a new program called as iCrest. Then recently, Niti Aayog's Adult Innovation Mission has launched Adult Innovation Mission iCrest. What is the full form of iCrest? iCrest is an incubator capacities enhancement program for a robust ecosystem. That is the full name of the iCrest. Incubators, incubator means startup. Then incubators, capacities, capabilities enhancement. We want to enhance the ability of a person who is going to start up a new business. For a robust ecosystem, for what purpose? For making a rich ecosystem, economic system in the country, and focused on creating high performing startups. Then AIM iCrest. iCrest is a mission for promoting startups, highly performing startups in India. Simple, because question will come, and which of the following is correct regarding the Adult Innovation Mission iCrest scheme, which was recently launched? The aim is to promote the high performing, creating high performing startups in India is the first of its kind initiative for advancing innovation at scale in India. This is one initiative for promoting innovation in India in the startups. Now we can discuss something regarding Adult Innovation Mission. Adult Innovation Mission is a Government of India's flagship initiative to promote a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in the country. Everybody think in an innovative way. You think in a new way, and instead of every time searching for a job, sometimes create a job. That is also important. Not only searching for a job, everybody is searching for a job in India. Indians are good searchers for job. Yes, we are very versed in creating a job. That is why Adult Innovation Mission wants to promote the culture of creating new jobs instead of searching for new jobs. Then Adult Innovation Mission is a Government of India's flagship initiative to promote a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in the country. Entrepreneurship means somebody establishing their own self-employment scheme, their own business. Then that we want to promote. Under Adult Innovation Scheme, there are 6 initiatives are there under the Adult Innovation Scheme. Initially, in the first year of launching, 6 initiatives have been included as a part of Adult Innovation Scheme. Why I am discussing all the 6? Sometimes they will ask the question, which of the following are true regarding Adult Innovation Scheme? One is Adult Tinkering Lab. Tinkering labs means that, what is tinker? Tinkering means that creating a problem-solving mindset across the schools in India. Our children have a problem and they are unable to, they are very good in education. They are very good in learning. But you might have seen that among the educated Indians, day by day, the suicide is increasing. Among the educated Indians, and day by day, when the era is passing by, we are becoming more modern and more suicide happens among the educated people. The old people who are the rural people and who are into the rough rural life, they don't do much suicide. Suicide is much coming among the educated Indians at present. Why? They don't, when a problem comes in their life, they don't know how to solve it. Because they lived in a luxurious atmosphere. Parents were not creating any problem for them. They were just from the home. They were stepping into the bus and going into school, and they are coming back in the bus and coming in the school. Parents are waiting on the roads. And yes, that's a new culture in India. And Yes, that is a new culture in India. In my childhood, I was walking 1 kilometer into the school. Sometimes in between the rainfall comes, we go and stand up under a tree and waiting there. Sometimes we are cutting a leaf from some tree and we are using that as an artificial umbrella and coming back home. From that experience, you have to learn how to solve a problem in the life. And new generation of the children, they are unable to solve any problem because they never faced any problem from the beginning of their life. Then that is why in the schools we want to create a problem solving mindset, and that should be included as a part of curriculum for the students. And for that purpose, adult tinkering labs, adult incubation centers, incubation obviously I told you, startups, and fostering world-class startups and adding new dimension to the incubator model, and how to have a new startups in the world. And that is also we want to motivate among the youngsters in India how to start up and how to do the startups in a successful way. For that, adult incubation centers, adult new India challenges, fostering product innovation and aligning them to the needs of various sectors and ministries. Adult new adult adult new India challenge, that is whatever products are required for the new India, we want to promote it. We want to foster product innovation in India, innovative products that come from India, and aligning them to the needs of various sectors and ministries. How we can use an innovative product in various sectors of economy and various ministries of India, that we want to promote through the adult new India challenge. Next one, next one is Mentor India campaign. As we are doing the personal mentoring, similarly, a Mentor India campaign means a national mentor network, making a network of the people who can mentor each other in collaboration with public sector, corporates, and institutions to support all initiatives of the mission. Different initiatives are there under this mission: school problem solving, and motivate and giving training for the for the startups, etc. All these programs, whoever are ready to share their thought and idea on how to implement it successfully, we have a Mentor India campaign. In that, if a person has good experience of running a business successfully, and he can register the, he can take the he can share his experience with the other people, then we want to make a group of mentors who can give guidance for the new people coming into any innovative program under adult innovation mission. Next one, adult in community innovation center, to stimulate community-centric innovation and ideas in the unserved, underserved regions of the country, including Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. In small Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are less populated cities and below 5 lakhs population cities. We call them as Tier 2. Below 2 lakh or 3 lakh population, we call them as Tier 3 cities. Then in Tier 3 cities and other excluded areas, or the unserved areas of India, to train the community how to be innovative. And a group of people in a village, how you can create an innovative economic opportunity for you all, and to train them on that, there is Adult Community Innovation Center. Next one, ARISE, to stimulate innovation and research in the micro, small and medium enterprises industry, MSME industry. Then ARISE is a mission and that want to stimulate innovation, that is new ideas, and research in the MSME industry, micro, small and medium enterprises industries. That is these are the 6 initiatives under the Adult Innovation Mission. You need to have a simple idea, and if you have a proper idea on what is Adult Innovation Mission, it will be easy for you to identify, because if a statement from outside comes, you will at least be able to identify this is not related to Adult Innovation Mission. Then next one, after this I will stop. I will take only one more current affairs today. Yuva. What is Yuva? And Yuva, and that is the name of the program. Va, we are using that term to motivate somebody, to tell that the person is great. U means that youth in India. This program tells that all the youth in India, you are great. The great youth in India, because most of the programs, how we have to remember is that we have to remember the meaning of the term. By remembering the meaning of the term, we will be able to easily remember the what is the aim of this program. Yuva is a multi-stakeholder platform that aims to prepare young people to transition from education and learning to productive work and active citizenship. See, normally what a country will tell, dear youth of India, you learn well, yes, and what your parents will tell that, and you learn well. This scheme tells that more than focusing much on education, you transform yourself from education into productive work. Do something good and productive, and do something to be an active citizen of India. Because now the era, we have to realize that by learning a lot and lot and lot, it is a crisis only. Yes. And after doing PhD, our PhD holders are unable to get a suitable job. Yes. Sometimes our PhD holders are going for the government job as a clerk only. Am I right? And there is a problem of too much education in India sometimes for certain section of the people I'm talking, because they are only learning and learning and learning. Thousands of PhD scholars are coming out every year. How many vacancies of assistant professors we are creating every year? Very less. Once I went for an interview of an assistant professor, I found that 13 candidates were the one vacancy. 13 candidates came. I was doing PhD at that point of time. I found that I am the only PhD pursuing student who came for that interview. All others were finished PhD 7 years back, 8 years back, and 5 years back, and working as a guest faculty here and there, etc., managing somehow the life. I thought that let them get the job first. Yes. And because I have enough time now, I was simply doing PhD. That time itself, I was getting almost 36,400 rupees, including the home run allowance as a JRF, as a SRF, Senior Research Fellowship from Government of India. These people, after finishing PhD and after for 8 years, unable to get a job, I was feeling sympathy towards them. I thought that more than I am getting job, let them get it. Problem is what? Only learning and education. Then instead of too much education under this scheme, it's an interesting scheme. That is why an interesting scheme, and government asks the people, young people, to transition from education and learning. You transform yourself only from learning into productive work. Do something productive. Start up your company and start up your own business and start up your own whatever you can be excellent in, and be an active citizen of India. Instead of searching for a job after education, create a small business where you can give the job for some 5 people. Recently, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports and Yuva, Generation Unlimited India, together signed a partnership to empower the young people in India. It is being done, this partnership is done in collaboration with the UN India. We are implementing this scheme for empowering the youth in India, and with the UN India, UNICEF, UNDP, and UNFPA, and I don't remember what is the UNFPA. UNDP is United Nations Development Program. UNICEF is United Nations International Children's and Education Fund, something like that. Children only. UNODC, I don't remember. You can search in Google. UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, United Nations Human Rights Commission, and International Labour Organization. And by collaboration with all these organizations, the Yuva program is implemented by the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Then aims to develop potential of young people through meaningful engagement and participation in the social, civic, and community initiatives. Then we want the youngsters to be involved in social, civic, and community initiatives also, instead of only getting educated. That is the aim of the Yuva scheme. Then one more point. Anyway, I told you that I will teach you up to here. Hagia Sophia. Yes, Hagia Sophia. Historically, and it's okay, I'm taking the Hagia Sophia also. 10 minutes is there, but continuous lecture on the current affairs sometimes will be boring. From next time, I will take half current affairs, half CSAT. Then it will be interesting more than continuing complete current affairs only. Yes, Hagia Sophia. Historically, it was a church or a cathedral. In the history, Istanbul city in Turkey, it is a very historic city. And this Hagia Sophia, personally, I have visited that. And when it was a museum, I have visited that in 2015. I have visited Hagia Sophia personally. It was a great experience visiting Hagia Sophia. Then Hagia Sophia, historically, it was a cathedral or church. In the history, till 1453, Istanbul city was ruled by a Christian dynasty named as Byzantine Empire. Then Byzantine Empire was the Christian dynasty who were ruling the Istanbul city. Historically, the Istanbul city was called as the Constantinople. Then when it was Constantinople under Byzantine Empire, it was a church or cathedral created by Byzantine Empire. In 1453, a Muslim ruler named as Muhammad al-Fatih, and you might have seen sometimes, and in Amazon Prime or not in Netflix, I think there is a series called as Ortugal, and this is the story of this Muhammad al-Fatih. Then this Muhammad al-Fatih, the Muslim ruler, he was coming from a background called as Ottoman family or Ottoman dynasty. He conquered Constantinople, defeating the Byzantine Empire. In 1453, a Muslim ruler named as Muhammad al-Fatih, and he is known in Turkey as Ortugal, and he conquered Constantinople and the present-day Istanbul. When he conquered, he converted the Hagia Sophia from a church into a Muslim mosque. Then he converted that into Muslim mosque. Now later, the Ottoman Empire, which was established by Muhammad al-Fatih, it was abolished after World War I. After World War I in Turkey, because Ottoman Empire was a part of Central Powers in the World War I, Allied forces won the war, Central Powers got defeated. Then Ottoman Empire became weak. When Ottoman Empire became weak, one military leader in Turkey named as Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the Istanbul airport at present is named as Atatürk Airport. Then Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, he was a military leader of Turkey. He conquered and he took power in Turkey, defeating the last Ottoman Empire. He came to power. After he came to power, in 1934, he converted Hagia Sophia into a museum. Then, originally it was a church till 1453. When it was conquered by Muhammad Fatih, he converted into a mosque. Later, in 1934, when this person, the Atatürk came to power, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk came to power, he converted into a museum. Now, in 2020, the Supreme Council of Turkey, that is the Council of the State, like the Supreme Court of India, the Council of the State, and because like the Supreme Court of India has given judgment in the Babri Masjid, similar, it was a issue almost like that, and a controversial issue. On that controversial issue, the Council of State, the Supreme Council of State means that like the Supreme Court of Turkey, it is similar to Supreme Court because they call it as Council of State. And they have given a judgment on July 10 that cancelled conversion of Hagia Sophia into a museum in 1934. That cancelled that Hagia Sophia, as per the records available in Turkish government, it was a mosque. That is why Hagia Sophia from a museum, it should be reconverted into a mosque. Then in 2020, by the judgment of the Council of State of the Turkey, Hagia Sophia was again reconverted into a mosque. That is why it was an international discussion. We should know what is Hagia Sophia. At least this much regarding Hagia Sophia will help you to get the answer in the examination. Then I'm stopping now. Thank you all. Bye.